regular meeting of the Planning Board of the Township of Bloomfield, Tuesday, December 14, 2021, is now in session. Notice of the time, date, location, and agenda of this meeting, to the extent then known, was provided at least 48 hours prior to the commencement of this meeting in the following manner pursuant to the provisions of Chapter 231 of the Law of 1975, the Open Public Meetings Act. One, by posting such notice on a bulletin board of the municipal building, and two, by mailing such notices to the offices of the Independent Press, Bloomfield Life, and Star Ledger. We'll now have a salute to the flag. Allegiance to the flag, United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Nick, please take the roll.
Okay. Dr. Hill?
Here.
Mr. LaForte? You're on mute.
Yeah,
There you go.
you know what? You see, that's to be expected with him. We know that.
I know. Mr. Zitka?
Here.
Mr. Babula?
Here.
Councilwoman Mundell?
Here.
Mr. Lassick?
Here.
Councilman Rockwell?
Here.
Chairman LaQuaglia?
Here.
For the record, Mr. Stern, Ms. Richardson, and Mr. Harvey are all absent. And also for the record, in attendance is the board engineer, Anthony Marucci, and the board attorney, Michael Rubin.
Thank you, Nick.
Got it.
Okay, we have no resolutions or minutes, correct, Nick?
Correct.
Okay, so right off the bat, we're going to shuffle the agenda around a little bit. And our first thing in the agenda will be the application of 98 Broad Street LLC as applicant and DPF Properties LLC as owner for minor site plan approval and any such other relief as may be required from the zoning ordinance of the Township of Bloomfield to use a vacant building as a daycare for children ages 18 months and older in a professional office / residential PO / R zone on premises known as map 11, block 245, lot 10, better known as 98 Broad Street. Regarding this application, their attorney, Mr. Viteri, is here. Would you take over, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. John Viteri, entering my appearance on behalf of the applicant, 98 Broad Street LLC. They are the contract purchaser of the premises at 98 Broad Street here in Bloomfield. We understand that we had received a letter from the Historic Preservation Commission, basically a letter of no interest, but subsequently, I guess the garage came into question, and it was a determination made that we would need to appear before the HPC, which we will do. We would like to be able to carry the meeting to your next meeting without further notice, as the applicant spent considerable funds doing the notice. And hopefully by then we will have had the opportunity to be in front of the HPC. If not, I believe it can be legally further carried from that date to your next meeting, just to keep the chain of notice going.
Mr. Rubin?
My concern is that the application may change after the applicant's visit to the HPC, and the garage may or may not still be there. I think that, and we don't really know how long that may really take. It's the holiday season. Don't know whether the board might not even have a quorum at this time of year. I don't really think it's that much of an onus on an applicant to renotice. I do it very often myself, sometimes as a result of my own stupid mistakes. So
I doubt that, Mr. Rubin.
No, don't doubt that. The older I get, the more frequent they become. So I think that it's reasonable to ask him to renotice.
Okay, if it pleases the board, we'll renotice. We'll attempt to get on the agenda for the HPC as quickly as possible. And I just wanted the board to be sensitive that my client is the contract purchaser. It's not the owner of the site, and there are some contractual limitations. I understand that's not the problem with the board, that it's just a practical problem that I have to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, look, it would have been obviously better if you had been there before tonight, but you haven't been, and we apologize for any confusion that the township caused in that regard. But that happens.
Yeah, no apologies needed. Understood.
So, I don't think notice is going to affect the quickness with which you will reappear. before the board. So I just think it's a procedural nicety. I think that perhaps the notice might even mention the fact that you have been before the HPC so that any neighbors who were concerned about that would be advised that in the notice to that effect and what the outcome was. I think that might be helpful to the community. That was included in your
Enough
notice.
said. We'll renotice.
Thank
Thank you,
Okay,
sir.
So,
I just want to let Mr. Vettery know I'm patiently awaiting getting the Zoom meetings scheduled so that I can give you that Zoom information, because I have a couple that need it on the zoning board as well. So hopefully by the end of this week, I will have that information for you to add to your notice so you can get it done as quickly as possible when you need to get it done.
Great. Thanks, Nicole.
Okay?
Thank you,
No
everyone.
problem.
okay, that being said, board, can I have a motion to adjourn this application to a further date to be set at which time it's proper to do so and to adjourn without prejudice? Can I have a motion to do that, please?
I so moved.
Mr. Zitka, second.
I'll second it.
Mr. LaFort, Nick.
Okay. Am I on mute? No. Okay. Dr. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. LaFort,
Yes.
Mr. Zitka,
Yes.
Mr. Babula,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mundell,
Yes.
Mr. Lassick,
Yes.
Councilman Rockwell,
Yes.
Chairman LaQuaglia.
Yes. All right, so the meeting is adjourned to a further date in the future, sometime in the near future. And thank you for your cooperation, Mr.
Thank you
Vittori.
very much.
We will accommodate you as best as possible. just so
Thank
know.
you. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Happy holidays, everyone. Take care.
Thank you, you
Likewise.
too.
Same to you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, now, next order of business. Resolution sent to the planning board from the mayor and council for review regarding preparation of amendments to the Bloomfield Center redevelopment plan, phase 1, to permit cannabis retail sales as a permitted use within the commercial corridor. And Bonnie Flynn, yes, you're here, man. Could you please give
Yeah,
us?
let me just preface this so that the board knows what their role is here. This is an amendment to a redevelopment plan. It's governed by the local redevelopment and housing law. The statute asks the board to review it to identify any inconsistencies with the master plan and to make any other recommendations they deem appropriate. And that's
Thank
the, this is not a public hearing. No one needs to be put under oath. This is just a review and recommendation process.
Okay, and then Ms. Flynn is going to give us the presentation on that, correct?
Yeah, she's gonna run through each and every one of these.
I don't have to
Okay.
swear her in for this, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, okay.
Okay, Bonnie, could you just turn your camera down? We're just looking at the
There
top
you
of
are.
your head. A little more.
Perfect.
Oh,
Okay,
boy.
good. That's good.
Thank you.
Please continue.
Good evening, board members. And if I may, Mr. Chairman, I just want to maybe take this out of a little bit out of order. I feel that the third listing, C, maybe we should do that first.
However you
It's
want to do
somewhat
it,
the
it's fine.
simplest. It's
Yep.
about the distance between cannabis retailers. And that's really more of a general ordinance
Yes,
change.
that'll be fine.
So this is a pretty simple, straightforward ordinance. We do have similar distance kind of exemptions for personal service. So it's not, out of the ordinary to have this type of condition or restriction. We are kind of the mindset of, we don't want to bombard any single area with the possible queuing issues that might happen, certainly when it first opens up. And this way, adjacent property owners are not impacted by any of that type of, queuing issue or, just everyone's eager to get buying. So that's kind of the idea behind that piece of the ordinance.
Okay,
And then getting more specific, we do have the current ordinance allows retail dispensaries in the B2 and the central business districts. And the ordinances are adding the commercial corridor, which is basically the area from 6 Points north to Liberty Street and Ward Street along Bloomfield Ave as an additional corridor to allow this type of use. Again, pretty straightforward. It is our center. So we felt that it was also an opportunity to, have some economic vitality in the area. And also there would be the similar conditions with the 250 separation and other things. One condition that you might want to add in your resolution back to the council would be to add, it is in the act, I believe, the Cannabis Regulatory Act, to exclude properties that are benefiting from a tax incentive. Basically a pilot, they're allowed to have retail dispensaries on those properties. So that might be a condition because, in the redevelopment area, we do have some pilots in existence.
If I can excuse you, Bonnie, excuse me 1 second. Is that pilots in effect now or future pilots?
In effect now or future, right?
Or for everyone? Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
I have a quick question, just because I realize this is not a public hearing, but I have two
But you have to do
questions.
3 resolutions, right? Or
I'm
back?
sorry?
We have to do 3 resolutions back, so I'm messing you up, huh?
No, not at all.
By taking
Not
them?
at all.
Okay.
I have a resident that asked two questions about this in particular, and I don't know if I'm allowed to ask that or not.
Well, is it
For
relating
them?
to what, is it relating to what Bonnie just said now, Nick?
Yes.
You want to answer that as we go along, Bonnie, so there's no confusion at the end?
Sure.
Okay, so the
Okay,
first question is, what is the distance between the
Oh, it's
retail?
250 feet.
Okay,
is
and the other
proposed.
question is this going to include the Bloomfield Center redevelopment plan phase 2 as well, or no?
Not at this time, just phase 1.
Okay. Thank you very much. That's all I have.
Okay, thanks, Nick.
No problem.
Please continue, Bonnie.
Well, that's pretty much it. Right now, as you know, the ordinance has allows 2 dispensaries per, I guess we call it sectors instead of wards, since wards can change the boundaries. And of course, more of our commercial areas are in the southern section of town. So yeah, I don't know if that may change in the future, but we'll have to see and navigate this new territory that we're all in. But I
Okay,
see no
so-
issues with general master plan, no inconsistencies with the redevelopment plan. It's basically retail, which is allowed in all the sub-districts of the phase 1, but we're concentrating on just that commercial corridor, which is Bloomfield Avenue.
Board, any questions for Bonnie? Councilman Rockwell.
What would the rationale be for excluding someone who has a pilot?
I believe that has
The
to do
statute.
with
It's in
the
statute, Mr.
federal,
Rockwell?
yeah.
Councilman Rockwell, it's statutory. The cannabis enabling statute prohibits any property who is the beneficiary of a tax incentive from hosting a cannabis business of any kind.
Okay, thank you.
So all we're doing, because the redevelopment plan includes language regarding incentives that are available in town, we wanted to make sure that when someone reading the redevelopment plan knew that they weren't available to people who had cannabis businesses on their property. That's why we want to add.
That answer your question, Councilman?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Babula?
Hi, Bonnie. So what was the rationale for setting the distance between cannabis retailers to 250 feet?
Actually, I can't answer that. I believe the liquor license is 500, and I think we split the difference possibly. I don't know if Anthony can weigh in or Mr. Rubin. I'm not 100% on that.
Anthony, is there, can you answer that?
There is for alcoholic beverages, there is a distance. I don't know what that is, but I'll defer to Mr. Rubin on that as far as the distance goes.
Mike? You're
I don't know
muted,
the
Mike.
answer to that, frankly.
Well, while Mr. Rubin is thinking, well, one of the reasons I asked is because I happen to notice that Maplewood has introduced a proposed amendment to their cannabis regulatory ordinance in which they are setting the minimum distance between cannabis retailers to 1,000 feet, which I think is actually a reasonable distance. One of my concerns, given that we're still in the very early stages of the cannabis legalization in New Jersey, is we don't quite know how it's going to play out. The experience from other states, generally seems favorable. But the rationale for the original ordinance, which we established a maximum of 6 retailers with 2 in each ward, essentially, was to kind of take a go it slow approach. And my concern is that the 250 limit would be too small. I don't want us to see us get to a point where we have a proliferation of these businesses because of overwhelming demand. And again, I understand that right now the limit is 6, but the council has already had discussions in a recent meeting to potentially raise that to 8. And the other consideration is that a number of towns have decided to ban cannabis retailers outright. That was the rush to get the ordinance done back in August, I believe. That's why we had to hear it ourselves before it went back to the township council, was because the state had imposed a deadline by which towns could ban it and or regulate it. And if they didn't, then everything was essentially allowed. So a number of towns, I don't know which, it would be probably helpful to know, have decided not to even allow these businesses. Of course, residents in those towns, it doesn't mean that they're not going to partake of cannabis. They're going to go to the towns where these businesses are located. So I think what we're going to see, which is unlike liquor. I think you'll find liquor stores allowed in more towns that probably are permitting cannabis. So one of my concerns is over the next couple of years is that you may find a demand on the towns that have decided to legalize cannabis retailers coming from the towns that have not. And it may put a demand on towns like ours to increase the number of cannabis retailers. And so I'd hate to see us get to a situation where we have these things kind of popping up in every corner, so to speak. I don't mean to be flippant about it. So I would be inclined to recommend a greater distance, more than 250 feet, of maybe like 1,000 feet, which is still only about 1/5 of a mile. I think that's very reasonable.
Bonnie, do you have a comment on that or an answer? Bonnie, you there?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
It's certainly a preference that you can recommend. I think the zones themselves are kind of in tight areas. And since they're only limited to 2 in each area, I'm not sure, we can adjust that number and possibly the distance between them. It's really just, I think, a preference. But it is a tight area, so maybe 1,000 is too much. Maybe 500 is more reasonable.
How could we then determine that objectively? We're kind of sitting here thinking, okay, is this number good? Is that number good? Do we need to do some research and maybe see what the prevailing limit is in other towns? I'm not quite sure how to approach that in a more empirical way.
Well, I'm not sure there is an empirical way because none of these places are open yet. So it seems to me that, there's 2 ways of looking at it. One is you want to limit the number as best you can for whatever personal, political, moral, or other reasons you may have. And the other is let the market decide what works. One thought is the fewer you have, the more crowded those establishments that exist will be. And therefore, the more deleterious they will be to the surrounding neighborhoods, perhaps the public sidewalks and other things. And the more establishments you have, the more spread out the consumer demand will be. So that's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is we got a lot of empty storefronts. If these storefronts get filled and they get filled for a few years and the market then weeds out the chaff, and at least those landlords will get rent for a few years. So there's a lot of factors in place as to how many there should be in town. And like for example, there may be that the prime establishments are close to one another, And so that we're not going to meet our demand or our cap if we don't allow them closer than 250 feet, because there aren't reasonable places that would be, or the best places might be within 200 feet of each other. We don't know what the market is. We're not experts. This is not a market that any of us have ever studied, or there's probably not a lot out there to help us. The council has decided that 250 feet is an appropriate number. The planning board certainly has the right to suggest a different number, but that is it. But I don't know that there's any empirical way to make that determination. You know, the ordinance, the statute says 200 feet from churches and synagogues and things like that. And so maybe they just say, well, 200 feet as consistent with state statute controlling the sale of alcoholic beverages. So maybe they just took the 200 feet that applies to distance from churches and so forth and said, well, let's make it 250 feet. I suspect it was fairly arbitrary, but that doesn't necessarily make it wrong.
No. Before I continue, you made a pun. I don't think you realize you did it when you talked about weeding out cannabis retailers. So, I hear what you're saying, and that's why I wanted to bring this up, because I think this really needed to have a discussion, deliberation among the board, rather than just kind of, waving our hand and saying, sure, fine. But I think, there's a difference in what the reason is for a limit between, synagogues and churches and schools, and the different, and the issue here. I mean, you don't want to have, I think the limit, of 200 or 250 feet of liquor stores and cannabis retailers and schools and synagogues and churches, because you don't want these things right next door to those institutions. That's understandable. But here we're talking about, how much clustering do we want to allow or not allow among potential, cannabis retailers? Do we want them to be able to cluster in a certain area, or do we want to have them dispersed? Do we think it's going to be, beneficial to have them, clustered together, or do we think that's going to have a detrimental effect on a neighborhood? And we're kind of flying blind here. We don't really have any empirical, evidence to work with, because, like you said, none are open yet, which is why I wanted to bring this up. I saw that Maplewood decided to go with a 1,000-foot limit. They're a small town, primarily residential. Our demographics, the nature of our town is a little bit different, but maybe we need to think about a greater limit. I'm all in favor of the legalization and making these available, because, it's the will of the people, so to speak. But I think we also need to be somewhat conservative from a planning perspective until we see how this unfolds. I mean, that can only be changed, but I think it's maybe to our advantage to kind of set the marker a little bit more conservatively now, and recommending to the council. I mean, they're going to do what they're going to do, because it can always be reduced later on. But if we have these things clustering tightly together now, you can't move them once they're already there. So, but I'd be curious to see if any of my colleagues on the board have any, similar or differing opinions on this.
Can I just make one other point, if I may?
Yeah, Mike.
And just solely with respect to the phase 1 area, I'm not sure that, given the limitation or the restriction on properties that are the beneficiary of tax incentives, that if you have a distance any greater than 250, you're going to get more than one of these in the phase 1 area. And I think that is a topic that needs to be discussed, particularly with the councilwoman present, as to whether or not that was a decision made by the town that they wanted to try to incentivize, that area of town to generate, retail interest. And I'll leave it at that and defer to Bonnie and to the councilwoman and let them discuss that.
Councilwoman, did you have a comment on that?
I did. I believe I think that number, and I'm pretty sure we had this conversation in a council meeting, that number is there because it becomes prohibitive to have more than one, as Mr. Rubin had said, in a certain zone based on the way that we've determined and where these are permitted. Bonnie, do you recall specifically? But I don't think it was an arbitrary number. I think you're right. I think that there was something about the number, and then therefore it would push more of these establishments to other zones, right, in town.
Right. Yeah, because the distance between 6 Points and State, the diner, say, is if it was 1,000 feet, that would really just have one in there anyway. I mean, when we have the one already established, that's on tonight, the medical. Maybe not arbitrary, but a thoughtful arbitrary.
If I could just jump in here for 1 second. We can only have 2 per district, correct? Irregardless of the distance. So Mr. Babula makes a good point, but again, we're guaranteed only 2 per district. So whether they're 250 or 1,000, you're only going to have, it's not going to be 10 or 12 of these cannabis stores here. It's only going to be 2. But my question, Bonnie or Mike or Anthony or Paul, can this number be changed later on, the distance, without causing a big problem if applications are in already?
No, it could be changed at any time through the same process that's being implemented today.
So let's just say, well, again, we can only have 2 per district. So, it's, and in reality, it is a commercial store. So it's not going to be out in the woods somewhere or in a park. It's going to be where there's foot traffic or visibility, which is mainly probably Broad Street or Bloomfield Avenue, something like that. That's just common sense, in my opinion. Again, Mr. Babula, if they were 5,000 feet apart, that would be even nicer because then we'd have 1 per district, but that would preclude us from competing with other towns, which we don't want to do either. I mean, if the business selling the cannabis is going to be prevalent anyways, we might as well take advantage of it in plain English, business sense wise. However everyone feels about it, otherwise that's your opinion, but business wise, it's something we do have to be part of. So, I don't think it's a problem right now. And again, if we do see a problem in the future, again, with only 2 per district, I don't see how that's possible. But again, I'll leave it up to the rest of the board to make a Councilman Rockwell, you were raising your hand. I'm sorry, sir.
Yeah, let me just say, someone asked the question. I just want to answer it. The alcoholic beverage statute is 500 feet. I looked it up. It's 500 feet. So you can't have premises that sell alcoholic beverages within 500 feet of each other. Is that a compromise? I don't know. I think, like I said, it's really subjective.
Mike, I don't know if you could answer this or not, but can the cannabis store be close to a liquor store?
I don't think there's any prohibition on that. Hold on.
I believe it's just on the same premises.
They just can't be on the same premises as a liquor store
The
or
same
any
building.
food or any store that sells food. So you can't have a cannabis store and a convenience store on the same premises.
Okay. Councilman Rockwell, you were going to say
So
something.
a lot of the rationale that went into the 250 feet, I agree, had to do with the fact that it's only 2 in each district, in each ward. And because of the other restrictions of proximity to schools and churches and other buildings, that would really limit where a retail business could be located. I don't see a problem with having a couple of them that are close to each other. I think it's good competition. Somebody can go, gee, I don't like the prices over here. I'm going to go to the one down the block. I don't think it's a problem that they're only within 250 feet of each other. And we do have limited business areas in those 3 districts. So it's a pretty limited area. So I'm satisfied with the 250 feet.
And just again, what the councilman was saying, if you do have 2 within 250 feet, you're not going to have another one for God knows where. So because of the limitation of 2 per district. Greg, I'm sorry.
Can I just clarify one other thing? Because I think there's some confusion. The limitation is not per zone. The limitation is the municipality was divided into 3 sectors with a north-south line, approximately the railroad line, and then Bay Street, if I remember correctly. I don't have
Bay Avenue.
Bay Avenue. So there's 3 sectors. the one tonight will be one in the same sector that 6 Points is in. So regardless of this distance, you're only going to get one more under the current ordinance in the southern zone of the southern third of the municipality. And if that's in 6 Points, there will only be one in 6 Points under the current restrictions, if tonight is approved. So irrespective of the distance there, that is irrelevant unless they increase the cap.
Councilman, please get, were you speaking, Councilman, or you were done? Oh, no, Greg, I'm sorry, you were raising your hand.
Well, I guess we do kind of look alike.
A little bit on TV, yeah.
So I just wanted to respond to one thing that you said, Mr. Chairman. You are correct. Right now, the limitation is 2 per zone, I guess they're calling it. What got me thinking about this was there was a discussion at a recent council meeting about the idea of perhaps increasing it to 8, because apparently there has been some very strong interest in locating these establishments in Bloomfield. And so that's what I was thinking, that more conservative distance may be more appropriate before these places get established. I think perhaps, maybe a 500-foot limit would be, reasonable, more than 250 feet. Mr. Rubin mentioned a 500-foot limit, I think, for liquor stores. But I think, I forget who brought it up, but I think also a good point is that maybe we should also have a distance limit between cannabis retailers and liquor stores. Perhaps those shouldn't be located. So maybe a 500-foot limit between cannabis retailers and a 500-foot limit between cannabis retailers and liquor stores. 500 feet really isn't all that far, but I think that goes a little bit further towards kind of dispersing these places a little bit until we see how this unfolds. And again, we're only making a recommendation to the council. They could choose to accept it or, go with the original one. And if they do go with the 500-foot limit, that can always be reduced later on in the future if it's deemed to be impractical.
Would you include bars and restaurants that serve alcohol in that 500 limit for liquor stores? Because then you're basically going to wipe out the whole town.
Well, that's a good question. I think probably not, because they would be consumed on premises. My understanding is that nobody's going to be consuming anything on premises at a cannabis retailer.
Or a liquor store.
Well, that's why I'm thinking, liquor store and cannabis retailers are probably in one category. Bars and restaurants are in a different category. So I would just limit it to cannabis retailers and liquor stores. I don't see a need, just off the top of my head, to include bars and restaurants in that, because people are not taking it away from those establishments.
Mr. Marucci, could you jump in on this? What's your opinion on this, sir?
Well, I believe the 500-foot limit might be a problem even for 6 Points then.
Chairman, I have a question.
Is that Ms. Hill?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Is it okay?
Dr. Hill, yes. Yeah, fine.
No, it's okay. My question is, I guess I'm not really understanding the rationale if everything is takeout. If it's a liquor store, you're going in, you're not drinking there. You're going to purchase something from there. If it's the cannabis store, you're going in, you're not in there, you're going in and coming out, from my understanding. If it's something different, I need to understand that. Because if you're just going and purchasing and going out, I'm just not understanding the rationale behind the distance. It could be next door, down the street. I don't care where it's at, if it's going in and going out, from that perspective. So I just would like to hear more, I guess a little bit to tease that out. What is the real rationale behind if I'm going in and coming out of either place? I don't care if they're next door to each other.
Bonnie?
Well, I think that's a very good point when it has to do with the distance from liquor stores.
Mm-hmm.
I think the distance between each other, as I said earlier, the queuing and the big draw that's going to happen in the beginning when they open might impact adjacent retailers or businesses. So that might be a good reason to separate them a little. But since there's going to be really only 2 in each area or district, not sure that holds a lot of water, but I mean, that's kind of my thinking of having them a little separated. But from liquor stores, I agree. It's a retail establishment. You're going in, you're going out. So.
Any other
Bonnie,
comments, board? I'm sorry,
I was
Dr. Hill.
going to follow up. Bonnie, is there an assumption that people that are getting cannabis are automatically going to get liquor also? I'm just trying to connect this. I can't really connect it, and I'm trying, Chairman, because I don't understand the concept or the rationale of the retail. I know that, for us, it's business, and it should be. So I'm not really conceptualizing the in and out of purchasing something, whether it's 2 doors down or 4 doors down. And between the liquor store and the cannabis, I'm just saying, just those 2. So I don't know, maybe everyone else understands it a different way. I'm sorry, I just didn't understand it.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's a problem, but I mean, between liquor store and dispensary, but
Okay.
that's another preference that maybe we could flesh out more.
Board, anyone else have a comment on this? Mr. Zitka?
Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Zitka?
Yeah. Since this is all brand new and we're not experts at this, I think we should just go with the recommendation at this point with the council as suggested, and then let it play itself out as time goes on.
It could always be changed in the future, correct, Bonnie?
Yes.
If we see that we're overwhelmed, or, well, again, there's only 2 per zone, so I don't see how we could be overwhelmed, but if we see that it's not working out, it can be changed, or the mayor and council could change it, or we do, however that works. I'm not sure. Okay, anyone else, any comments?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Marucci, yes.
just for a point of clarification, in the ordinances that were sent to the board, there is one error where it mentions that retail cannabis is permitted as a conditional use. It says in the B2 CBD and CC zones. The CC zone is an error that needs to be corrected. So when you send your approval to the mayor and council, that has to be changed.
Okay.
Yeah, I've highlighted that. Mr. Marucci pointed out to me earlier. So like on the ordinance for the phase 1 in the 3rd paragraph on the 1st page, in the line, it includes the CC zone, which needs to be deleted. And it's in some resolutions, or at least one resolution too. I'll find them all and I'll add them to each of the resolutions that I prepare for each of the ordinances.
Thank you, Mr. Marucci. Any other comment, board? Mr. Barbula, go ahead.
Yeah, just one final thought, just to follow up on the question that Dr. Hill raised. I suppose the argument that I would make for limiting, for imposing a distance limit, because I've given some thought to this, it's really a social justice issue in my mind. I mentioned earlier that a number of towns have decided not to allow any cannabis retailers whatsoever. And in my, unscientific observation, they tend to be more affluent towns. And those are also the towns that historically have also, in my opinion, have tried to evade or avoid their other obligations, such as affordable housing, and, have run up against, the COA requirements and have been sued by the state to enforce their obligations. And so it falls upon towns like Bloomfield to kind of pick up the slack, whether it's affordable housing, whether it's, going to be cannabis retailers and other services that may be desirable overall, but the other towns have decided not to permit within their borders because they want to have, they don't want to take, the good with the bad, so to speak. So I suppose that's one of my arguments in favor of limiting that is, we shouldn't have to pick up the slack because other towns have decided not to permit these establishments in their towns, despite the fact that I'm sure the majority of the residents are in favor of it, and their residents are going to come to towns like ours to purchase them. Now, I certainly understand the other argument, the counter argument that, well, maybe that all that business is better for Bloomfield because it fills up storefronts, and it may provide some economic revitalization. I guess I'm just concerned about, what are the detrimental effects that we may not know about in terms of having a number of cannabis retailers and having them located together until we actually see what happens on the ground. So I just wanted to address your question and give you my thinking on, where I was coming from on that. Because I thought it was a very good question to raise.
Mr. Babula, I agree. Can I make a suggestion? Given the existing caps, maybe the board would consider a recommendation that if the caps are raised, it should consider raising the distance requirement.
That's a good point.
So that way, right now we know there's not going to be big clusters because there's only 2 per district. If there's 4 per district, then maybe we should be more concerned about clustering and need to raise the limit. Would that be a fair compromise?
Mike, I'm sorry, Mr. Murphy. If the caps are raised, then it would be up for discussion to raise the distance. You're not saying automatically raise the distance, right?
In other words, the recommendation would be that if the council entertains the idea of increasing the limits on the number of establishments, they should consider increasing the limits on the distance between those establishments.
Okay.
That could be a recommendation that the council makes as part of their response to this referral. Because it sounds like your concern is this clustering that we're going to get all these businesses, and right now we can't. It may be that concern is more valid if the caps are raised.
Yes. Yeah, and that's where I was going, because again, part of this was triggered by that recent discussion at council meeting, where they were, contemplating maybe raising the limit from 6 to 8, which signals that there seems to be a very strong demand. And again, should we be thinking down the road where there is a potential for clustering? But if we're making a recommendation that, okay, if the council does raise the cap, they should, give consideration to increasing the distance to prevent the clustering, then I think that's reasonable. I mean, that's essentially where I was going with this.
Actually, that's a very, very good point, gentlemen. Mr. Babula, Mr. Rubin. Any other comments, board? In that case, Bonnie, can we just do like A, B, and C all at one time, Mike? Or should we do each one individually?
Yeah, I think that we could, they're very similar. I think that we can, do a motion recommending adoption of all 3 simultaneously. I don't see a problem with that.
Okay, so.
Now, just to make sure what they are, one is amending the phase 1 plan to permit these with certain specific conditions. The other is to amend chapter 315 to recognize that amendment to the phase 1 plan. In other words, the cannabis ordinance says they're only permitted in these 2 zones. The cannabis ordinance will be amended to say that they're permitted in these 2 zones plus the phase 1 plan. So it's just basically further establishing the First Amendment. And then the Third Amendment is that it is establishing a 250-foot limit for cannabis establishments throughout the municipality.
What about the exclusion of private properties, Mike?
Through the zoning ordinances. And then there'll be, that's what the 3 do. And then we will add to the first one a recommendation that it exclude, that it state that pilot properties are excluded.
Just sort of, could someone just, give us a rough idea of what the boundaries are of the phase 1 geography are, just so we have a clear understanding of that?
It basically runs from 6 points up Bloomfield Ave to Ward Street and Liberty Street.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, it doesn't include the south side of, it doesn't include the south side of Glenwood. The east side of Glenwood. It doesn't include the block 228 because that's under a separate redevelopment plan and is subject to a pilot anyway. It doesn't include Bloomfield and Ward because, oh yes, it does. It includes Bloomfield and Ward, but that is a where that project is being built, where the old Royal Theater property was, but that's a pilot program, so it can't go there. And then it goes up to Liberty Street on Washington and Broad.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments, board? Mike, do I have to open this up to the public?
No.
In that case, I'm going to make a motion that we move these resolutions and approve them back up to the council with a couple conditions. Number one, we exclude pilot properties from the retail sales of cannabis. And if the caps or the amount of cannabis stores are allowed, the distance, the increase in distance should be discussed. And we will keep the distance at 250 for the time being, again, unless the amount of stores is increased. Anything else, board?
Are you voting on all three at once here?
Yeah, we can do all three,
Okay.
correct? Right, all right. Do I
Just
have a
make
second?
sure.
But I will write separate resolutions for
That's
each.
fine. I just want to make sure I know what I'm doing here in my notes.
Do I have a second?
Who moved that?
Okay.
I did.
Okay.
Second,
I'll second
it.
So
Mr.
Lafort?
Lafort. Any comments, board? Further conditions? Nick, take a vote.
Okay. Dr. Hill,
Yes.
Mr. Lafort,
Yes.
Mr. Zitka,
Yes.
Mr. Babula,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mundell,
Yes.
Mr. Lassick,
Yes.
Councilman Rockwell,
Yes.
Chairman LaQuaglia.
Yes, so moved. And Mike, you'll take care of that for us then,
Yeah,
please?
we'll be ready for January.
Great, okay. All right, let's see. Now, Bonnie, you want to do D also while you're running well there?
Sure. So we have an ordinance, Mr. Rubin and Mr. Marucci, along with the BCA, actually revamped the entire chapter 315. Right now, the ordinance is just carving out the signs portion of the chapter. And just some highlights. They increased the signage, window signage from 10 to 20%. Kind of streamlined and made things streamlined and made it flexible. So it's an interesting mix. Some more specific requirements related to multiple tenant buildings. I think that was an issue in the past. One thing that is kind of major is internally illuminated signage, which will be allowed. I know that is definitely something the boards have seen for variances, so that that's a big change. And I don't know if Anthony or Michael want to weigh in on some more specific things, but.
Anthony, did you want to add anything to that, sir?
I think Bonnie explained it well. The idea was to allow internally illuminated signs, but not the old-fashioned box type signs. The signs would be more the channel letters with the lights that would come in from the back, backlit sign, backlit. But it's basically to bring the ordinance up to date.
What
If I
section?
could just say real quick, Mr. Marucci, it's the channel it signs in, correct? Each individual letter, not the big,
Yes,
old
yes.
fashioned,
The
signs you
old-fashioned
see in
box.
Las Vegas. Yeah. Okay,
Box
yeah, no,
signs, yeah.
that sounds good. I mean, we've allowed that with numerous buildings that we've done in the centers, which actually, if some of the board members were there, I believe was the college came in and showed us that, and they looked they were outstanding, the look of them. I thought it was really nice, but that's my opinion. Mr. Babula, you going to say something? Yeah, good, I'll say it.
Well, I was going to ask which section the internally illuminated signs was mentioned, but I was scrolling through and I just found it. Because that's kind of been my bugaboo, with the internally lit signs, but that was more because objected to giving out variances. I thought the ordinance should be changed. So I'm glad to see that we're finally addressing that, so we don't have to deal with that.
Actually, Greg, you were part of some of the applications where we approved the signs, I believe.
Yeah, I know. I was a consistent dissenter with those. You know, I was.
I wasn't going to say that, but go ahead.
Everyone pretty much left me twisting in the wind when I tried to rally support around the cause. But that's fine. That's fine. But no, I'm glad to see we're finally addressing this. So I guess my concern, is, do we have any way of regulating the brightness? Because, I guess we're still prohibiting any kind of like digital signs. So I just want to make sure that as we're keeping up with the times, we're also keeping with the technology that allows brighter signs. So we don't, allow a loophole where we can have super bright signs. Do we have anything in there to deal with that?
We have that, correct, Anthony? Or
Yes.
Paul Lassick? Either
In
one?
no instance shall the light intensity of any illuminated sign exceed 75-foot candles measured with a standard light meter measured at any point in front of the sign at a distance that is no greater than the smallest horizontal or vertical dimension of said sign.
So now we just have to buy a light meter for somebody in town.
Well, actually, that's Mr. Lassick's job, so we'll let him
I
worry
got
about
one if you
that.
want to borrow it.
We'll give him a light meter and a ladder. Anybody else?
I think there's one important thing here that should be mentioned. It's the structure of the ordinance. In the past, it was based on zones, and now it's based on uses. So when you have these, corner stores in residential zones, they don't have to come before the board for a variance every time simply because they're a commercial use in a residential zone. If they have a commercial sign that conforms to the ordinance, they'll be able to install it without variance relief because the ordinance now is oriented towards uses rather than zones. And I think that's a significant improvement.
Thank God.
Any
So
other
on that-
comments, board? Yeah, Greg?
I'm sorry, if anyone else, I don't want to.
No, go ahead, continue.
Well, so I recall one of the things we also dealt with was a situation where you had, like, I recall with Aldi, where they basically were on the corner. And so, of course, we had to give them a variance because they needed more signs permitted because essentially they had two frontages. So I assume that this ordinance deals with that type of situation?
It did in the past as well.
It did?
Yes. You can have, if you're a corner lot, you can have a sign on each frontage. That's always been the case, as I recall. Anthony probably could correct me better if I'm mistaken, but that's always been the case.
You're allowed a sign on each frontage.
Okay, so
Yes.
maybe I'm remembering a different issue with that application then. And I noticed, just a minor point, I see that we're prohibiting neon signs now. Is that?
That's
Not
always
that-
been the case as well.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Not that we have any left, unfortunately. We've lost all the nice ones we had.
Bars.
Yeah, well, Roxy's and the one on the American Bank building. That's all I have.
Anybody else? No? Can I have a motion then that we recommend this ordinance go back to the mayor and council as is, I assume then, right? There's no major changes that we want to make with this or recommend any changes, correct? Can I have that motion, please?
I make that motion.
Mr. Zitka, second.
So moved. Seconded.
Mr. Babula, Nick?
Okay. Dr. Hill,
Yes,
Mr. LaFort,
Yes.
Mr. Zitka,
Yes.
Mr. Babula,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mundell,
Yes.
Mr. Lassick,
Yes.
Councilman Rockwell,
Yes.
Chairman LaQuaglia.
Yes, so moved. Mikey will take care of that also?
Another resolution for January.
Okay. Does anybody need a break before we continue? We've only got one more,
Keep moving.
I could use, if I could, I'm sorry, I'm
Minutes.
still recovering from surgery. I could just
Oh, that's right.
use a little bit
Let's
of
take a-
break if I
let's
could.
take a 5-minute break then, board. It's
Okay.
7:55. We'll come back
Appreciate
at
it.
8.
Just appreciate that. Thank you.
No
Yep.
problem.
Is everybody back, Nick?
Yes.
Okay. Planning board is now back in session. As I find my glasses. Okay.
There you go.
Next order of business. Application of GTI New Jersey as applicant and 2648 Realty LLC as owner for amended minor site plan approval and any such other relief as may be required from the zoning ordinance of the Township of Bloomfield to use the existing medical marijuana dispensary as a retail store for cannabis sales in the neighborhood business B2 zone on premises known as map 3, block 21, lot 1, better known as 26-48 Bloomfield Avenue. And we have a memo from Mr. Marucci regarding this, which everyone has in their possession. I'm not going to read through the entire thing. Mr. Marucci, if you don't mind, we'll take this as each part comes. Your
That's
memo?
fine. That's fine.
Okay. Mr. Skolnick, you're in possession, of course, of Mr. Marucci's memo, correct, sir?
Yes, sir.
And usually that's what we work off of when we make sure we meet all his conditions and recommendations. So if you will, Mr. Skolnick, please begin.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, Richard Skolnick and my clients, GTI New Jersey, LLC. And as you mentioned, we're here for an amended site plan approval and conditional use approval. The site has an address of 26-48 Bloomfield Avenue, and it's identified on the tax maps as block 21, lot 1. And as you mentioned, we're in the B2 zone, and you're aware that the site used to be a laundromat, and currently it's operating as a medical cannabis dispensary under the trade name Rise, and that's been operational since a couple of months ago in September. We now have the municipality's amended ordinance, which you're all aware of based on the prior discussion, and that permits cannabis retailers in the B2 zone. And the use is subject to a series of conditions. We call them conditional use standards. And we're going to have some brief testimony tonight going over those conditional use standards and confirming that we meet that. There are no variances a part of this application tonight. And as I think you also know, the site was subject to some exterior renovations, some interior renovations, and also parking lot improvements. There are no interior renovations that are proposed, and the proposed exterior renovations that are before you tonight are really very minor and simply to comply with the new ordinance. And we'll go through those. We do have Mr. Marucci's letter, of course. There's been back and forth since his letter, and we're not going to have any issues with compliance with any of the comments in Mr. Marucci's letter. There were discussions today about the parking calculation and how that works. There's been some refinements to that. And again, we comply and no issues. One item of note before I get to my witnesses, traffic safety. As you discussed, that's obviously an important issue for the municipality. It's an important issue for us. We do meet the parking requirements from the ordinance, and we're very confident that the site is going to function safely from an operational standpoint. That being said, we have also, in addition to complying with the ordinance, we've reached agreement with the police department to have traffic control officers present for at least the first month of operations and more if necessary as a bootstrap to make sure the site functions. I noted your discussion that it is a new type of use in New Jersey, so we want to have that extra layer of protection on that. Chairman, I have 3 witnesses tonight. First is going to be Brendan Bloom. He's the Vice President of Store Development. He's going to sort of go over the operations and what is going to happen out there. Then I have Greg Oman. He's from Menlo Engineering. He's filling in for the engineer tonight. And finally, we're going to have our Director of the Security, Jose Navarez. So I think it's going to be about 45 minutes without questioning, maybe 20, 25 minutes. We can condense it if you need it with Mr. Bloom, and about 10 minutes with each of those other witnesses. And then I do have some other folks for questions if you need them.
Thank you, Mr. Skolnick. Please continue.
Okay, so I'm going to call as our first witness tonight, Brendan Bloom. He's the Vice President of Store Development for GTI.
I'm
He
just
would
going to
have
ask
to-
him to raise his right hand and I'll swear him in. Do you swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Just state your name for the record.
Bloom,
You went out again. Say that again. I'm sorry.
Brendan Bloom,
Perfect. And you were the VP for store
Development.
development. Thank you.
Continue.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Bloom, tell us who you work for, what you do for a living.
Like I said, my name is Brendan Bloom. I work for Green Thumb Industries, the parent company that operates the Rise dispensary in Bloomfield currently. I've been with this company, Green Thumb, for almost 6 years now. I've had a hand in opening most of our stores. We are about to open number 68 or 68th store tomorrow across the country. And so been very close to the opening of medical stores, opening of adult use stores, and as well as converting from medical stores to adult use stores across the country. So obviously this is a very new use in New Jersey. And, you know, one of the things that I think we, as our experience at Green Thumb, is that we've done this a few times. Obviously it's unique in each state and in each municipality. And I understand and respect that. But we have gone through this process before.
And GTI has some other facilities in New Jersey. Can you just briefly discuss those for us?
Yeah, we have 3 other facilities in New Jersey. We have 2 medical retail stores, one in Patterson and one in Paramus. And then we have a cultivation center, which is non-public facing. Think of an industrial park where we grow the cannabis, process it, and then distribute it from there, but a non-public facing facility in Hackettstown.
Okay. And can you just describe what's going to happen here in terms of the operations? I know you have some slides, which we can mark as a group as Exhibit A1.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just going to ask that a copy of that be sent to me if it hasn't already.
Okay. And we have somebody, Anne Marie Zamba is on, and if she can be permitted to share the screen,
Sure.
she's going to handle our exhibits for us to try to make it as efficient as possible.
The share screen is on, so you're more than welcome. There you go.
Okay.
There you go.
If Ms. Zamba's going to talk at this time, she has to be sworn in also.
I don't think she's going to talk. She's just going to help us out with the screen.
Okay.
Okay.
Continue, sir.
Thank you. Like I said, Green Thumb, we can move on to the next slide here, Anne Marie. All right. One of the mission statements, GTI, is to promote the well-being through the power of cannabis. Like I said, we're opening number 68 store tomorrow. We're very excited to be able to provide medical cannabis to our patients. We have been for some time here in New Jersey and most recently in Bloomfield. And, one of the things that Green Thumb set out to back in 2014 when it was founded was to normalize this as cannabis has been around us and is operating. People have been consuming it for a while, and now it's becoming legal. So there's a lot of different conversations, different activity, a lot of public perception. And I think the board said it earlier that it's the people that are changing to make this mainstream or make this something that, similar to a liquor store. So it's really refreshing to hear a board like yourselves talk about it in that same similar context. So if we want to move to the next slide. Here's our footprint across the country. Just giving a brief overview of who we are, who Green Thumb is. We're not a head shop that is a fly-by-night, or we're not a single operating store. We take our licenses and our compliance very seriously. We started the business, like I said, back in 2014 out of Illinois in a medical market, and then we've slowly grown across the country and really focused on just our mission statement of delivering well-being to people through cannabis. And one of those things, in medical markets, there's lots of patients that come and we serve that have actual needs and actual conditions that doctors prescribe for. And then also in our adult use markets or recreational markets where consumers, not patients, but consumers are coming in to try to feel better, try to experiencing something different. So this just is a nice visual, gives us an overview of, where we're at across the country. And it's not just this one store, but, a bigger support system across the country. If you want to move to the next slide. Here's some of the exterior photos of the dispensary in question here in Bloomfield. My role in this, the team I work with, we design, we permit and construct. So this site has been really fun to work with from a medical perspective. It was an old laundromat that we were able to, jump in there, do some pretty major renovations and some really nice, some areas on the outside, took it from what it was to what these pictures are. And for those of you who've driven by, it's really cleaned it up a little bit. And then this is from the rear view on the Sallyport receiving side where our product actually gets delivered. So the earlier pictures were from where the customers, right here, where the customers will enter and exit. We have a queuing line right there where the yellow marked spaces are. So in the event there is, overflow, we have a safe place for people to queue that's out of public way and out of traffic from the cars. So we can move on to the interior photos. And here's the story, for those of you who haven't been in a dispensary, it's obviously medical in New Jersey, going to adult use soon, but very, nice retail store. We try to make it a very welcoming, warm space. A lot of our customers, especially on the medical side, are brand new to cannabis or haven't been into a dispensary. So try to make it a warm, welcoming place where people can ask questions, learn about the product, and then come in and make purchases similar to a retail store. There is the state of New Jersey that has their own compliance regulations on how product is stored and safety and security. And I'll let Jose, our security director, get into that a little bit later. But we are heavily regulated by the state of New Jersey, and we take that really seriously. We can move to the next slide. Think, just a proposed area of, you saw those trash containers earlier. We're going to go ahead and enclose those to get them out of line of sight and out of, the residents that live not too far from there. Right now, they're just in those pictures earlier where they're just exposed. So we're proposing and recommending that we put something up like this. Move to the next slide. Move on, and then that area that I showed you earlier, having done this in other markets, when there is, in the event there is a line that queues outside the building, we would have tents like this to keep their customers / patients, out of the harm's way of natural elements, whether it's snow, rain, or sun, or anything like that.
And that's a requirement in Bloomfield's ordinance, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Move to the next slide.
Okay. A few more issues, Mr. Bloom. Your proposed hours of operation.
Monday through Friday, 10 to 7, and then Saturday, Sunday, 10 to 5.
Okay. And can you just explain what's going to happen when customers come in the first time and then after they're used to the system, so the board could have a feel for how long the transactions are going to take and what the customer experience is going to be like?
Yeah. So a lot of our customers who come in for the first time, there's it takes maybe 10 to 15 minutes to acclimate them with the product. And it's your first time in a store where you've never purchased the product. Legally, you're going to have a lot of questions. You're going to be looking for our staff to answer those questions and help educate you on what the products are. So that's usually our first visit, what people are, asking a lot of questions, getting educated. And then after that, we utilize a online website where we can actually You can build a cart. You can, not purchase over online, but essentially pick out the products you want, reserve them. And then when you come in your second or third time after your first visit, it's a much quicker customer flow. In other markets where we see this, it's around 2 to 3 minutes for a transaction. So pretty quickly, you'll see some people that have, know exactly what they want, come in the store, pick out their 2 or 3 products, and then are on their way. We see more than half of our customers in our adult use markets across the country make their purchase, make their reservation online, and then merely come in, show their ID at the front door, show their ID again at the point of sale counter, exchange payment for the product, and on their way. So we really like to cater that, because if one thing, that came out of the pandemic and COVID-19 was customers really didn't want to spend as much time in stores. And, you're seeing that across every retailer, not just cannabis, but fast food restaurants and everything. So we definitely see that increase, and we think it's a business and a positive for the customer.
So for those customers, let's just call it after their first visit, after they're registered and they're familiar with the product, how many minutes in terms of order of magnitude are they going to be in the store, would you say?
Less than 5 minutes. Like I said, 2 to 3 minutes is really just the checking the ID, making sure they're compliant, making sure they're 21, and compliantly dispensing the product to them.
Okay. And you mentioned making sure they're 21. Obviously, sales to minors are an issue that everybody's concerned about. How's that handled?
Yeah. So to get a little more specific into it, we have a third-party software that we actually scan the IDs at the front door. So as you walk in, there's a software that if it doesn't scan, if the ID is fake, or for some reason, we get this lot where the barcode is rubbed off, we actually won't allow you in the store from an adult use transaction. So we have a third-party software that verifies that you're 21. So for our staff that are there, when you scan the ID, if it shows up green that says, yes, Brendan is over the age of 21, here's his birthday, verify that actually is him. And if it doesn't scan or they aren't 21, it'll show up red, and then we'll turn them away. And we use the same software in our other adult use markets. And then after that, they'll go in from the secured vestibule into the sales floor area, and then go up to the sales counter and make their purchase. Again, we have a second check where we check their ID at the point of sale counter, verifying that, Brendan is who he is. Check, pull his face mask down today, make sure the ID matches his face, and then, a visual verification. So we feel very confident in this. We do thousands of transactions a day right now under this system, and the double verification really gives us a lot of confidence that we're not selling to minors.
Okay. You mentioned the hours of operation as being 10 to 7 during the week and 10 to 5 on the weekends. What are you seeing as your peak hours?
Yeah, Monday through Thursday, peak hours is around 3:30 to 6:30. Fridays around 3:30 to 7. Saturday, Sundays, around 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. So, not the entirety of us being open where it's going to be busy, but those are the more peak hours kind of during the week, the after work crowd.
Okay. Can we talk about product delivery? And Anne-Marie, if you can bring up that slide again, that shows the Sally port or the garage door, just to cover that again quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. So
Anne-Marie, if you can, there we go. Okay.
Yeah. So product delivery, meaning when the cultivators or the processors in the state of New Jersey, so we only take product that's in the state of New Jersey because it has to be compliant with state of New Jersey regulations. They will come to the door here, and product will actually be delivered in a safe enclosed garage area. So it won't be taking place on the street like you would see large alcohol or beer trucks. It's actually out of public sight, out of customer sight.
Okay, and about how often are you going to be getting deliveries?
1 to 2 times a day. During the week, nothing on the weekends unless it was something unique, but 1 to 2 times a day during the weekdays.
Okay, so pretty low usage in terms of deliveries.
Yeah, and just to give everyone a frame of reference, it's not a 18-wheeler rolling up here with a massive, lift gate and a fork truck or anything. It's smaller vans like a Dodge Sprinter or even smaller than that. So, white vans essentially, or any color vans, but those white kind of construction vans that you see that are smaller, 4 wheels, they're not massive trucks with huge turning radiuses and whatnot.
And what how an employee comes out and just opens that up, they give a call?
Yeah, we have different protocols. We don't set it up, hey, every Thursday at 8 a.m. we see the same cultivator. We try to keep them a little sporadic, and Jose, our security director, can go into that. But we have a protocol of how we take deliveries, so it can't be tracked or consistent.
Okay, and of course, odors are a potential concern. Can you address that issue?
Yeah, odors for the retail site, it comes up, and I think it's just a misunderstanding a lot. So when we get products delivered from a cultivator processor, it's in its final package, meaning it's in a child-resistant package and tamper sealed. So a lot of plastic, a lot of glass. So the product is sealed inside its container. It's not opened. It's not sitting, it's not a big bag like you've seen in the movies or on TV shows where it's a large bag and you're taking it out in one piece at a time. It's in smaller packaging that is sealed, and we don't open it at the store. It stays sealed from when it leaves the cultivator. We accept the delivery, we inventory it in our vault, and then we dispense it to the customer. And so then the customer, puts it in a bag, takes it home with them, and then opens it up. So odors at a retail store are not an issue. Cultivation processing centers, different story, but that's not what we're talking about here.
Okay, and there's a requirement in Bloomfield's ordinance that there shall be no smoking on the premises. How do you monitor that?
We have security on site. We have signage stating such, and we have zero tolerance. We don't tolerate any type of smoking. So if somebody were to try to or something, we would immediately correct that behavior.
Okay, and I know we have the store manager on the line. I'm not intending to call her, but if there are questions, we could ask her to come up. But you have a policy of maintaining relations and providing contact points for the community?
Yeah, absolutely. I know Jose on our security team has made contact with the police department and made introductions, so I can let him get into that a little bit more.
Okay, and at the store manager level, and you're aware that the store manager has been, dealing with members of the community and addressing any concerns that they may have.
Absolutely.
Okay, Chairman, I think that covers most of what I wanted to do with this witness. I do intend to call next our civil engineer just to tell you about what we're changing outside and go through the compliance issues on the conditional use standards. That's about 10 minutes more. And then our head of security. And of course, Mr. Bloom's available for questions. I have the store manager and a few other people on just in case.
All right, thank you, Mr. Skolnick. Board, are there any questions for Mr. Bloom at this time?
Alan, I have two.
Sam, of course.
Just real quick, you mentioned that there's a queuing area outside in the yellow hashed line at the front of the building.
Yes.
Do you guys limit the number of people that are allowed in the store at one point or at one time?
Yeah, we follow the occupancy code. So whatever
Right, so
see the store is that's what we do. I
so
point.
it's more,
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, it's more public assembly capacity than it is your gig.
Yes, that is correct. In the queuing line, demonstrating the outside is just that we don't anticipate that, but we, are planning for in the event that there are a bunch of people that show up all at once, that we have obviously meeting the occupancy code for the inside, but then a safe space out of harm's way for the outside in that event.
Right. And my other question is, and I don't know necessarily if it's your headache, to be honest with you, is there a mechanism in place that a 21-year-old could come in and buy this cannabis, walk outside and give it to a minor?
Is there a mechanism in place for us to
prevent that from happening? I know outside off of your property, no.
Right.
Okay. But on your property.
Yeah, if we see that happening, or even if it's from one 21-year-old to another, we will absolutely intercept. We'll have security there to make sure that we're monitoring the area. So if we do see something like that, or have some sort of suspicion, we would correct that action immediately.
So there is security and there is monitoring of your space plus outside all the time.
Yeah, like I said, I'll let Jose get into it a little bit more, but we have more cameras than any bank you've ever been into.
I can imagine. Right.
and full-time security, and we're going to
on-site physical security. Yeah.
Is it full-time security 24/7 or just when you're open?
Just when we're open. Not just when we're open, but when staff is there, whether it's they get there 30 minutes before, 45 minutes before, or stay after. When our staff is there, our security's there.
Any other questions, board? Mr. Babula? You're muted, Greg.
So do the delivery vehicles drive into the Sally port and the overhead doors close before they unload?
Correct. And Jose will get into a little bit more, but there is a, we call man trap, airlock, where the door rolls up, the van rolls in, and then the door rolls down, and then the interior door would open up. So then safely, count the product and inventory.
Mr. Bloom, you keep going out a little bit with your.
Mr. Bloom, but just to touch back on Mr. Babula. So the van pulls into the building, you close the door, and then unload the van. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So you don't offload on the street and, carry it in or anything like that? Okay, good. Any other questions, board, for Mr. Bloom? I see no hands. Are there any questions? Nick, is there anybody on the audience participating here?
There are people here. I don't see anybody with their virtual hands up for questions. You can open it up for questions, see if anybody pops
It's
up.
open up for public questioning now, so.
Just questions for this gentleman's testimony.
Only for Mr. Bloom's testimony, that's all.
I don't see anybody's hands.
At that point, that's closed. Thank you, Mr. Bloom. Mr. Skolnick, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Chairman, I'm going to switch our order. I'm going to go right to our head of security.
Good.
Jose Navarez, if I can have him sworn and if we can get him in the chat room here.
Sure, I'm just looking for him. Where is Mr. Navarez?
I see him on the bottom.
Oh, there he is. Okay, raise your right hand. Mr. Navarez, do you swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Just state your name for the record.
Jose Navarez.
Thank you.
Hey, Mr. Navarez, can you tell the board what you do for a living?
Yeah, I am the Director of Security Operations for GTI. I've been here for almost 3 years now.
And can you give the board a little bit about your background prior to GTI?
Sure, I've have over 14 years of experience in security and IT with Nordstrom. I've done loss prevention for over 200,000 square feet facilities, supporting a business of close to $200 million, seeing thousands of customers for the last 14 years. Shortly after, I came over to GTI to support their internal security operations.
Okay, and you're, of course, working on all of their stores and all of their facilities across the country?
Correct.
Okay, and Chairman, this is really a fact witness, so I'm not looking to get him qualified as an expert, but I just want to give you a little background on him. So, Mr. Navarez, can you just give me a little overview of how the security systems work here? We'll get into cameras, cash controls, touch on the deliveries a little bit, and the coordination with the local police.
Yeah, absolutely. So at our Bloomfield location, we currently have 4 full-time security agents. And at the core of our security operations, all GTI security personnel are responsible for carrying out the managing and administration and implementation of our security operations plan, demonstrating proficiencies in our standard operating procedures with an emphasis on safety, access control, and product security, following all of our access control procedures, and monitoring and controlling our internal and external systems, including but not limited to our automated access control systems, CCTV feeds, panic and hold-up alarms, intrusion detection systems, alarm systems, fire and life safety, and conducting routine inspections. This allows us to have a cohesive working unit that ensures the safety and security of not only the premise, but most importantly, our customers and employees, and the safety of the building in general as well.
Can you give the board just a little overview of the type of cameras that you have in addition to the 4 full-time security staff?
Yep, absolutely. So we have 91 live streams throughout the facility and on the exterior of the building. We currently have 9 exterior cameras positioned throughout on each corner of the building, which allows us for a 360-degree view of the entire perimeter. This has come into actually very good use with the Bloomfield Police Department, as we've helped them out with 3 incidents unrelated to anything at the business, and provided them with some video for investigations that they were conducting unrelated to anything at our businesses. Within the facility, we have 23 cameras on each individual point of sale station. We have 4 behind the point of sale stations. We have 9 cameras within our vault, 2 of them dedicated to our security and IT room. That's where the brains of all of our security equipment and our IT equipment live. We have 5 solely dedicated to the receiving areas for intake. And then we have 2 dedicated to our check-in vestibule. So when you come in and out, we get a front-facing shot and a back shot from the person that's exiting. We have over 15 cameras on our retail sales floor, 7 in our order fulfillment and back of house area, 2 in our manager's office, 1 in our mechanical room, and 1 in our consultation area. Now, physically, we have 80 plus cameras. Some of those cameras, the difference between the physical and the live streams is some of those cameras are 360-degree cameras that have 4 different sensors integrated into a single camera that allows us to get 4 different feeds for a 360-degree view. In terms of our alarm system, we use a combination of holdups, panic buttons, motion detectors, glass break sensors, and door contacts to monitor the facility 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. This monitoring is done to our central monitoring station, which is our rapid response team. And they have an East Coast monitoring center and then also a redundant West Coast monitoring center, so that we have full redundancy of the monitoring that's happening at the facility. With that, we also have redundant UPS backup battery supplies that support the security system within the facility to allow us for redundancy in the cases of power outages or any issues that would happen, that's beyond our control, that where we would lose power.
Okay, and since this is a conversion or an addition of the retail to the medical, all of these features are all installed already. Is that accurate?
Correct. All of these features are fully installed. They're a requirement by the state of New Jersey to get up and approved to begin operation. So all of these features were inspected by the state of New Jersey's Cannabis Regulatory Commission and approved via them. One thing to note for the camera system as well is the Cannabis Regulatory Commission of the state of New Jersey also has direct 24/7 access to the facility's cameras.
Interesting. Okay. Cash controls here.
Yeah, so cash controls. We have the cash located in our safe that's located within our vault area. The cash is counted each night within our vault. The cash pickups are scheduled at random times and dates so that there is no consistent pattern to when the cash will be picked up. The cash company will proceed to the facility. They'll notify the facility They will be signed in, verified, and then the cash pickup will actually take place within our vault and then discreetly exit out our Sallyport area.
Okay. And Brendan discussed deliveries. Anything you feel like you need to add on the deliveries in the Sallyport area from your perspective as the head of security?
No, other than the fact that all deliveries are logged and maintained and inspected, and verification of the drivers are done prior to entering. We will, as Brendan mentioned, they are at random times, so there is no real cadence to a pattern. And, we do have 5, as I mentioned, 5 cameras in the receiving area with the additional security features of a man trap where, the roll-up door is open, the interior door access is disabled while that door is open. And then once that door is shut, the interior access door is then re-enabled. And we do that through our access control system that allows us to control who has access to what doors and what, and what areas in the facility.
Okay. And I had touched on in my opening statement that we've had conversations with the police staff in Bloomfield. Can you touch on that, on what we're trying to accomplish and how you help coordinate?
Yeah, absolutely. So I reached out to Detective Finkler initially with the Bloomfield Police Department, since we had assisted him with an investigation he was doing, and he put me in touch with Sergeant Menzel of the Internal Affairs Division, who he told me was also the extra duties coordinator. I was then able to set up a meeting, obviously a phone conversation with Sergeant Menzel, where I discussed what we were trying to accomplish with regards to having the Bloomfield Police Department provide some services within our first initial 30 days of adult use, pending approval by the state and the municipality. We had a very good conversation. He actually just got back to me yesterday, notifying me that he had received approval from the director to provide those security services and traffic control and pedestrian control, and that he would like to set up a physical meeting in the middle of January to visit the site and talk with myself over the scope of work and review everything.
Okay, and that's we're eyeballing a month, but that can be extended really on an as necessary basis.
Correct.
Okay. We touched on cannabis use on the premises. Brendan had that. How does that work? That's a conditional use standard from your standpoint.
Yeah, so the team is on site is in charge of monitoring and escalating appropriately and addressing any and all issues with regards to potential consumption, diversion, theft of product, or anything of that sorts. They're in charge of making sure that is 100% monitored and addressed immediately. As Brendan mentioned, we are heavily regulated, so any and all incidents also must be reported to the regulating body, which is the New Jersey Cannabis Regulatory Commission.
Hey, Chairman, I think that concludes with this witness.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Skolnick. Mr. Navarez, how many guards are on site while the operation is in full swing?
Currently, we have 1 to 2 on site, depending on the day of the week and the traffic. Obviously, for busier times, we'll have maybe two on site. But for the most part right now, since being a med use, we'll have 1. We will look at staffing in terms of once, the adult use comes up, we will look at adding more staffing and supplementing as well with third-party contracted security also for the initial phases of this.
And one other question, are the guards armed?
The guards are not armed currently.
They're not armed. Okay. Any other questions, board?
I just had a quick one, Al.
Yeah,
I thought maybe I misunderstood. I thought I heard testimony saying that there was 4 security guards there already. Am I wrong?
There's a total of 4 full-time security agents hired currently. Yep.
That are on site or will be on site?
They based on scheduling, they are. So currently we have 1 on site, 4 full-time agents that are there currently that serve the facility.
So as it stands right now, those four, as it stands right now, those
Yes.
four are not there daily. Only
Correct.
one of them.
No,
they're
yeah,
daily.
correct.
Okay.
Yep.
So then really you only have one security guard there.
Right. A staff of 4. Yep.
Okay, thank
one
you for
on
that
site.
clarification. I apologize on that. So one, but it's subject to obviously, when this facility, if the board approves and does open, you're going to have to respond appropriately, certainly at the beginning. And I think the board was sensitive to that issue in the discussions that you had on the ordinances tonight, that there's going to be a learning process. And Jose, I'm sure you'll be responding with the correct staffing, given the demands.
Correct. Absolutely. We evaluate it as adult use comes up. And that is also why we partner with the local police departments in these towns to ensure that we have the proper safety precautions in place when this gets going, so that we can properly assess and give us time to make sure that we have the correct staffing levels.
One other quick question. Now that it's going to go for adult use, does Green Thumb contemplate putting armed guards there?
Yeah, at this time, we have
At
not.
any of their locations, is my point.
Oh, at this time, we do not have armed guards at any of our locations, with the
Okay.
exception of one in Florida.
Okay. Yeah, just curious. That's all.
Just real
Thank
quick,
you.
Mr. Navarez or Mr. Skolnick or Mr. Bloom, actually, would you consider having 2 guards there during your peak hours?
Absolutely. During peak hours, we constantly evaluate. It also depends on the amount of incidents that we have and what are the potential risks that are happening. Again, as we evaluate adult use in every market, it's different, and the reaction is different and the crowds are different. So we take all of that into consideration when we decide on the proper staffing levels. So we easily could use 2 to 3, depending on the evaluations and what we decide, depending on what we have going on at the site.
Mr. Rubin, can we make that a condition?
Well, let me just ask a question before I answer that, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, sure.
Will that evaluation include the Bloomfield Police Department in terms of, their views of what you might need based upon after this 30-day period? That whole evaluation will be done in consult with the police department. Is that correct?
Yeah, we will partner with them, and that will actually be the point of the meeting as well, prior to adult use, meeting with the director and Sergeant Menzel at the site to give a proper site assessment so that they understand how the operations are going to work, and then taking their recommendations as well.
And Mr. Chairman, I'm just worried that we're not really in a position to dictate what the security needs are actually going to be there. And if we say you have to have 2, well, maybe at 10 o'clock in the morning, there's nobody there. And I don't know that we should be making those kind of business decisions. I'm just concerned about that as a board. There's no variances required. This is a conditional use application. It's really, I'm not sure that we can make that judgment.
Actually, Mr. Rubin, I'm comfortable, as Mr. Navarez just said, that they are consulting with the police. And I'm sure more than once when this facility does open and, comes into full swing. And could we make it actually, can this be a condition? Well, actually, it's only common sense that they adhere to any recommendations by the police department for their benefit just as much as anyone else. Can we make that a condition that they follow any recommendations from our police department? Or can we just?
Well, ask the applicant about that. Do they have a problem with that?
Do you have a problem with that, Mr. Sullivan?
We'd be happy to consult and use our best efforts to comply.
Recommendations within reason, of course.
With that, yes, that's always the caveat with these sorts of things, because I don't know what I'm agreeing to, Mr. Chairman. But there's a lot of coordination, and I hope you can trust us in good faith that we're going to be staffed appropriately and not skimp on security here.
I appreciate that, but again, we are here to look out for the town. So
absolutely,
consult with the police, and listen to the recommendations. I believe we're in good shape with that.
We'll leave it to Mr. Rubin to finesse that language so that we can accomplish the goal there.
I'm sure he will too.
And if I could just make one point as
Just
we're talking
identify
about.
yourself, please, Mr. Bloom. You need to identify yourself.
Sorry,
That's all.
Brendan Bloom. Yeah, just one point on that is that in all the municipalities and all the places we've gone, we always take the approach of partnership with the local law enforcement because they're on our side. When we have any type of issue or any type of concern, we're working with them in partnership to make sure they know the area better than we do because they patrol it, and the beat, police officers and the chief and everybody knows those areas. So we always take that really seriously. And we look to that, when we know there are busier days or things that are going on throughout the town, we look to them to let us know. So it's something that we take really seriously. And like I said earlier, is, we have a lot of licenses out there. We were not going to risk any type of incident or being skimping on security to have, one less guard on a busier day. It doesn't make sense for us as a business. We look at things on a bigger picture that make sure our staff, our customers, our patients, and the community is safe. So that's the reason to have the local law enforcement there for the first 30 days. And then after 30 days, if they say, hey, this is going really well, everything's safe, we feel good, let's extend it for, a few more months. And we've done that, and we will do that here in this case. So just wanted to kind of drive that point home. Thank you for letting me speak.
That's a relief to hear that, Mr. Bloom. Thank you, sir. Any other questions, board? Nobody? I see, Nick, I don't see any hands. You see hands? Okay. Are there anybody from the public tuning in here or whatever, calling in, Nick? Nick, you're muted.
There's people on, but they seem to be just listening. Nobody's trying to ask
Nobody
a
has
their virtual hand raised.
Okay.
I'm so sorry. Excuse me.
Wait a minute. Who's speaking?
Hi, my name is Jessica Ruvain, and I would like to make comment, and I'm not sure if this is
Only a question now, Ms. Rubin. You can make a comment later on in the meeting, but right now it's a question for Mr. Navarez.
understood. I will hold off then.
Okay. Anybody else? Once, twice, three. That portion is closed. Thank you, Mr. Navarez.
Thank you.
Mr. Skolnick, continue, sir.
Yes, we're going to call our next witness, Gregory Oman.
Okay, Mr. Oman, raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Just state your name for the record.
Sure. Gregory Oman, O-M-A-N.
Thank you.
And Mr. Oman, you're filling in for the project engineer, but you've thoroughly reviewed the plans.
Correct. I've been hired to do a peer review. I've reviewed the application, the plans, and I'm here to provide testimony on the application and the minor site changes that are being made for this application.
Okay, is Mr. Oman an engineer?
Yeah, no, we're going to qualify him.
Okay, I just want to make sure I know who I'm talking to.
Yes, he's a civil. Could you provide the board your qualifications?
I can. I am the president and owner of Menlo Engineering Associates. I've been employed by Menlo for over 23 years. This coming March, I'll be a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey for 20 years. I'm also licensed in the state of Pennsylvania. I've testified in front of numerous boards, but I've never had the opportunity to be in front of this board.
Congratulations. Hopefully you'll be recognized as an expert in front of the board.
Mr. Skolnick.
We appreciate that. So let's go over the exterior site plan changes that we needed to do to comply with the conditional use ordinance. And then you can run through the conditional use standards. And then I'm going to deliver about 5 or 10 minutes over, Chairman, of what I estimated, which is not bad, really.
So far, so good, Mr. Skolnick.
Thank you. We're trying to be mean and lean here. Okay, so Anne Marie, you're going to call up the site plan for us.
Okay, this is a 0.65 acre parcel identified by the township's tax map as block 21, lot 1. Property falls within the B2 zone or the neighborhood business zone, and the retail sale of cannabis is a conditional use in the B2 zone.
I have a quick question. Are these the plans that were handed in?
Yes, they are.
No changes?
No changes.
We're still going to mark it A2, but I don't need a copy.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nick.
I'm sure everyone on the board knows where the property is located, but just for your information, Bloomfield Avenue to the north, North 15th Street to the east, North 16th Street to the west, and Chester Avenue to the south. The site is fully developed, has a one-story existing building on site of approximately 9,100 square feet, contains 29 parking stalls off to the north, northwest, including one of those are ADA compliant parking stalls. There are 2 full movement driveways off of Bloomfield Avenue, providing access in and out of the site, along with a 3rd full movement driveway off of Chester Avenue down to the south. Existing lighting is basically comprised of some floodlights off to the northwest corner and some building mounted fixtures that provide ample light levels in the parking areas during the evening hours. The minor changes in which are being proposed for this application are as follows. Directly adjacent to the existing ADA parking stall, we are designating 6 parking stalls directly to the west of those, as the cursor is indicating, to be pickup parking only. They're going to be signed for pickup parking only. Orders are placed online or called in. The person can arrive, they will walk in, pick up their order and leave. Very quick, high turnover parking stalls. The sign is specific and says that it is for a 10-minute maximum parking. The second change that we're making is along the northern facade facing the parking area, in which we're providing a queue line for customers in the need if there is an overflow. Possibly in the beginning, the first couple weeks, as indicated in the previous testimony, that there is that influx in the beginning when it first opens. But we're anticipating typically probably about 5 customers an hour on norm. So this is just going to be for that initial overflow. To protect each of these people here, we are placing bollards. The plan shows them to be spaced 8 feet on center with C-channels welded to them. Based on recommendations made by the board engineer, we are going to change that spacing down to 4 feet, provide some additional safety for any patrons that are lined up within that queue line. We are relocating some existing concrete bumper blocks along the southern parking area to provide ample drive aisle width. The existing dumpster down at the southwest corner that was shown earlier testimony and some of the photos are going to be surrounded by a chain link fence with privacy slats, again, to provide that buffer from any of the residents or anyone traveling on Chester. As already indicated, that the loading is all handled internally with access off of the south facade of the building. Expected deliveries, 1, possibly 2 a day, coming from 3 to 4 different vendors. As indicated earlier, we meet all the necessary conditions of the conditional use. There are 9 of them. They are all being met by this application to show that this is a compliant application and site plan. We've also had the opportunity to review the November 29th, 2021 review letter by the board engineer, Mr. Anthony Matucci, and we agree with all recommendations made within that letter. Lastly, if Anne-Marie, if you could just go to the internal sketch that we would like to add as the next exhibit. There were some discussions with the board.
Okay, call this A3. I'm sorry. We're going to call this A3, and we're going to call this parking calculation.
Correct.
Do I have this?
You do not. It was created today in response to an issue that was raised by Mr. Rubin about midday today.
You can just email me a copy.
Okay, and I believe that Anne-Marie has your email address, so she's going to do that as we speak.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
So based on discussions with the board professionals, board attorney today, there were some discrepancies in terms of how the parking calculation was generated on the submitted plans. The area that was shown was rather small for the customer area, and it basically showed a total of 4 parking stalls needed. To provide the board a little bit of a comfort level and your board attorney, what we did is we calculated basically the entire area that any customer could possibly be within the building, with the exception of the restrooms, and came up with a total square footage of 4,043 square feet. So based on the ordinance requirements of 1 space per 150 square feet, That requires a total parking count of 27 parking stalls. We are providing 29 on site, therefore we are compliant with the township ordinance. That concludes my testimony.
Okay,
Board, excuse me, any questions, board?
okay, we could take that exhibit A3
Or screen?
off the screen.
Perfect.
Any
Okay.
questions, Mr. Omen, board? Mr.
Mr.
Lassiter?
Lassiter.
Yeah, I believe Mr. Marucci indicated that the sidewalk along the perimeter would be replaced, if I'm understanding correctly.
Correct. We're willing to agree to all the recommendations made, including if there's any sidewalks in disrepair, they will be repaired. Some additional landscaping within the green spots on the site and a few other recommendations, correct?
Yeah, because would it be possible maybe to add a couple street trees along there, because it's kind of barren, to kind of maybe green up the area, no pun intended?
We can certainly work with the engineer on that, yes.
All right, that's fine.
Any other questions, board? I see, Nick, you see any hands? I don't see any hands.
I don't.
Okay. Any questions from the public? Nick, you see anybody trying to?
I don't.
Give
No.
1 more 5 seconds. Nobody? Nope. In that case, that portion is closed. Thank you, Mr. Omen.
Thank you.
Mr. Skolnick?
Chairman, I have a literal team of other folks, but they would really be responsive to any questions that you may have. So that concludes our presentation. We have an amended minor site plan, obviously quite modest in terms of what's needed to comply, and confirmation that we comply with all conditional use standards. As I mentioned in my opening remarks, this is a no variance application. So we are in that rare circumstance where the land use law says shall approve. We hope we've addressed all of the material concerns. We appreciate the time your staff also and Mr. Rubin have put into this.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, in addition to hearing from Mr. Marucci, I think would be helpful, and I don't really mean to impose upon her further, if Ms. Flynn could just comment on the way that the customer service area was calculated in relation to how the ordinance reads, just so that, because obviously the difference between the 4 shown on the site plan and in their zoning table pursuant to the applicant's calculation as the required parking count versus the 27 that is now being established, I think would require some planning support. And since Ms. Flynn was involved in the drafting of this ordinance, I think that would be appropriate, in addition to hearing from Mr. Marucci. I hope she doesn't mind me doing
Ms.
that.
Flynn, do you mind? Bonnie's still here, yeah. Ms.
She
Flynn.
is, but why don't we, oh, there she is. Okay.
Okay. Did you hear Mr. Rubin?
I did. Yeah, that's fine.
We need to swear you in though first.
Okay.
Okay, Bonnie, raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Just state your name for the record.
Bonnie Flynn.
Thank you.
And you're the township planner. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. You understand what I asked you to do, and again, I apologize, but if you could just briefly help us here, that'd be great.
Yeah, there was a little discrepancy with that last page of the site plan and calculating the square footage. The ordinance itself does exclude certain areas in a business: stairwells, elevators, check-in areas, lobbies, any employee areas. So that was the work that was done today to kind of take that out and come up with the area that really only the public would be accessing, and to have that matching parking requirement on site.
And you think that the area that should be calculated as the base is all the area where the public can circulate, when they're to buy product, correct?
Right. It's between the display cases, kind of, and then through, waiting for the pickup area.
And all the way to the exterior windows, correct?
Right. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I just, this won't be the last application we get. I just wanted to make sure that the board was comfortable with the way this was calculated, because it's something that we should use uniformly in every application that we get. And I just want to make sure that everyone understands that those of us who advise the board think this is the proper way to calculate it, and not simply those areas that are adjacent to the counters where one or two people might stand in a column.
Thank you, Mr. Rubin. Ms. Flynn, you're comfortable with this application as it stands now then?
Yes, I am.
Mr. Marucci, any comments?
Let me swear him in.
Oh, yeah.
Raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Just state your name for the record.
Anthony Marucci.
Thank you, Anthony.
Mr. Chairman, and members of the board, you've heard the testimony. You also have my report dated November 29th, 2021. The application does meet all of the conditions required for the retail sale of cannabis in a B2 zone. In addition to meeting all of the conditions, the applicant has answered all of my questions that are at the end of my report and my recommendations. For example, the placing more bollards to protect people that are in the queue lines. I think that's important. He will replace the sidewalks that are deteriorated as directed by the Township Engineer's Office. And as Mr. Lasik pointed out, I put in my report also that some of there's room for additional shade trees surrounding the property, and I'm sure they'll work with us as to where and how many. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Marucci. So, Mr. Skolnick, very quickly, you do agree to work with Mr. Lasik's office and Mr. Marucci's office regarding this area as far as sidewalks, paving, trees, anything like that?
Of course, Chairman.
Thank
Yes,
you, sir.
we do. We'll be happy to take a look at Mr. Rubin's resolution, but I'm sure we'll be able to work out the precise language.
Very good. Thank you, sir.
It'll
Mr.
require at
Chairman.
least 45 trees.
More or less.
How many trees did you want?
And
45.
45.
You have that, Mr. Skolnick?
Mr. Rubin and I have known each other for quite a bit of time on the land use circuit, so he takes some pleasure in ribbing me since he's the board attorney. Now, if he comes to Union Township,
It's a whole other story.
You just make a mental note of that. That's all.
We
You know
will
what payback
remember.
is, so, yeah. Okay, any other questions, board?
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah, Mr. Dakin.
one question. In order to get this product, do you need a doctor's prescription?
Currently, yes, but the state of New Jersey is going to have adult use where you won't need it at some point in the next coming months.
Thank you.
Currently, yes.
Do
I have that right, Brendan?
Brendan Bloom, just a point of clarification. It's not a prescription, but it is a certification from a doctor saying you have one of the qualifying conditions. So it's not like you have to get it filled every 2 weeks. It's just a recommendation.
Okay, good. Any other questions, board? That part's closed. Any comment, Nick, are there any comments from the public regarding this?
Yes, I'm just gonna, Miss Reuven, I'm gonna have to just swear you in and you're gonna have to give us your name and address.
Absolutely.
Okay, raise your right hand.
Yep,
Do you swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
State your name and address for the record.
Jessica Ruvain, 12740 McCormick Street, Valley Village, California, 91667.
12740 McCormick Street,
She's from California.
California.
Yep,
Okay.
that is correct. So thank you everybody for allowing me to speak. First off,
You do have 5 minutes though.
absolutely. So I first want to commend GTI on a phenomenal presentation. I think that they show exactly what it is that a medicinal dispensary, which has been awarded an ATC license by the state, can offer to the town. And the reason I'm speaking with you tonight is this dispensary is asking for approval to open an adult use section of their facility. I'm not sure if this council is currently aware, but there are additional licenses that were just granted by the state of New Jersey for ATCs, and some of these ATCs are still seeking out a site to locate. My company, Umaway NJ, would very much like to operate in Bloomfield, and we think that we could provide meaningful access to the healing powers of cannabis to Bloomfield residents.
Ms. Rubin, you could make a comment about the application this evening.
Yes, this is related to the application this evening.
About the application this evening, not a sales pitch for your company.
Yes, no problem. I just am giving you background so that you understand where I'm coming from. And I hope that doesn't cut into my 5 minutes. But now the reason I'm making comment to you this evening is when I've spoken to the town about whether an ATC would be allowed to open adult use without having to go through the Class 5 retail channels, I was told that that was something that would be debated this evening. And I see that's something that you're considering tonight with GTI's application.
Excuse me, I'm going to stop you right there. That's not to be debated this evening. This board doesn't make issues like that on an initial basis. They would only make a decision like that upon the filing of a formal application. Sure. You need to file a zoning permit with the zoning official in town telling us what you want to do and where you're going to do it. And the zoning official will make a zoning determination as to whether or not it's a permitted use or not a permitted use, whether it's permitted with variances, and thus you would have to come before the board.
Sure.
And or whether or not a zoning permit, please let me finish, or whether or not a zoning permit will issue. So this board has no jurisdiction over your initial request to operate in town. You must go through the zoning board process.
Mr. Rubin?
I'm going to ask you, please, don't waste our time. Please.
Mr. Rubin?
No.
I believe I have an opportunity to speak.
Ms. Rubin, let me finish. Do not interrupt me. Do not waste our time. We are here on an application. If you have comments that says this is a good application or a bad application or recommendations as to conditions over which this application should be approved, then please state those. If you're going to talk about the industry or the healing powers or your company or your company's attempt to gain access to the Bloomfield, to a Bloomfield site, we don't want to hear it. It's a waste of our time. So talk about the application or don't talk at all, please.
Mr. Rubin, I appreciate your commentary. I would like to take some of my time to get to what I was getting to, which is we are very supportive of the city in granting this application, and we hope that the city would be consistent with that application towards other ATCs as well.
Thank you, Ms. Rubin. Cut it off, Nick. Is there anyone else? Hi. Any other comments from the public?
Yes. Wait,
hold on. Let me see who it is.
It's Mr. Davidson. Are you on a phone or you don't have video access?
Yes, I'm actually on the phone.
Okay. I'm going to have to trust you if I'm going to need you to raise your right hand. Do you swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
State your name for the record and your address.
Okay, my name is Kyle Davidson, and my address is 204 Berkeley Avenue.
That's in Bloomfield, New Jersey. Thank you.
And your comments, sir?
Good evening, everybody. I just wanted to, let you guys know and just show my gratitude to the Rise Dispensary. Over the pandemic, I was prescribed medication for anxiety, and it made me feel very sluggish and just not like myself. And I actually spoke with a patient care specialist at Rise at a block party, that they had, and they educated me on the benefits of cannabis, and they actually referred me to a doctor pertaining to my anxiety. Since then, I received my medical card. I've shopped with Rise several times, and I had a wonderful experience. And I was just very impressed with the staff there, the facility inside and out. And I just wanted to also say I was very impressed with the tree lighting that they had recently. I just felt it added a really good touch to Bloomfield. I've been in Bloomfield for several years now, 20 plus. And, you know, I'm just happy that it's there. It's very convenient for me. And it's in my hometown. And I just wanted to really just say that, you know, I'm very happy that they are there because they helped me out a lot. As you know, it's been a tough time in the pandemic. And, you know, I'm just very happy to be a part of that dispensary and have them in my hometown. And that's pretty much all I'll say.
Thank you, Mr. Davidson. I'm glad you're feeling better too, sir. Thank you. Anybody else? Nick, do you see anybody trying to get in?
Let me just double check. Hold on. No.
No. Public portion is closed. Are there any comments from the board? None? And that, you see any, nobody's raising their hand, right?
No.
I don't see anybody.
No.
Can I have a motion then to approve or deny this application? Somebody?
Chairman, I approve the application.
Mr. Zika made the motion to approve, correct?
Yes.
Second?
I'll second it, Alan, our chairman.
Second, Mr. LaForte, with the condition that they follow all Mr. Marucci's conditions and
And Bloomfield Police Department.
Bloomfield Police Department.
And the street trees.
And 45 trees that Mike wants.
45 trees that Mr. Rubin recommended. What, you want about a 2-foot diameter in them?
Flowering trees.
I need a place to sleep in the spring.
Yeah, right? All kidding aside, okay, we have the second. Nick, take the poll.
Okay. Dr. Hill?
Yes.
Mr. LaForte?
Yes.
Mr. Zitka?
Yes.
Mr. Babula?
Yes.
Councilwoman Mundell?
Yes.
Mr. Lassick?
Yes.
Councilman Rockwell?
Yes.
Chairman LaQuaglia?
Yes, application approved. Thank you, Mr. Skolnick and your team. Very well
Thank you. We
done, sir.
appreciate it. I got a note from someone on our team to say that the company believes it's a privilege to operate in Bloomfield. We understand that this is not without doing something new. Not risk, but doing something new that's a little different. And Bloomfield has stepped out, and we hope that we're going to fulfill the trust that you've placed in us on this application. So we thank you for your time, and we thank you for your trust, and we look forward to operating successfully in Bloomfield.
Thank you, sir, and thank you for a very
Okay,
well.
thank you. I wish everybody a happy holiday and a healthy
Happy holidays, Mr. Skolnick.
Thank you.
Happy holidays to you and your team. All right, board, very quickly, before we adjourn, we discussed, I think most of you were here, but maybe not all of you, the January meeting, we will continue to Zoom. And then at that time, Councilwoman Mondell, you were going to recommend that the reappointments will be done by then, or hopefully, actually, we're a mayoral board, so it's just up to the mayor. If we could have that in place for the January 4th meeting, that would be wonderful. And at that time in January, after we reorganize and possibly we might have an application, Nick, or you think we do everything on board, we can continue with that, and then we'll decide at that time whether or not to come in person,
Wait a minute. Hold on one second.
depending how this virus acts.
Just so the board knows, I had a conversation with the township attorney today about getting those appointments done at the reorganization meeting in January.
And just as a side note here, the application that I sent you guys that's coming is not on for January. I purposely put it on for February so that if we can have the January meeting, it will strictly be reorganization or the other application that had to adjourn tonight if they are ready and re-notice and all that.
And whatever resolutions you have, correct, Mike?
Correct.
Yeah, we have to we're going to need to get the resolutions done. So if we don't have a quorum as of January 3rd, we're going to need to schedule a meeting before the second council meeting in January. Councilman Rockwell probably knows that. Councilman Councilwoman Mundell knows when that is, but the conversations I've had with the township attorney was to get these resolutions done prior to that second meeting, because these ordinances are going to need to be reintroduced in January, because they don't hold over from year to year. So every time the council reorganizes, any pending ordinance business doesn't carry over until the next year. They have to be reintroduced at the first meeting, and then the public hearing will take place at the second meeting, and they want our resolutions in between those two periods of time.
Okay.
So we'll keep in touch with the mayor and council and Councilwoman Mundell and Councilman Rockwell. Any help will be appreciated with that.
Correct. And this resolution for this application will be voted upon as soon as we can meet.
We could do that and whatever Bonnie spoke about, if we have to touch back on that either.
I'm going to email Councilwoman Mundell everything she needs to know about reappointments first thing tomorrow morning.
All right. Thank you, Nick. Anything else, board? All right. In that case, everyone have a wonderful holiday and a happy New Year. Happy holidays to everyone.
Happy holidays, everybody.
And can I have a motion to adjourn? So moved. Meeting adjourned. Everyone have a wonderful holiday.
You too.
Good night, everybody.